In this particular lecture, we're going to look at voting, elections, and campaigns. Now, voting, also known as suffrage. The initial standards were established by the states. The Constitution does not establish any standards for voting. But we have amended the Constitution 4 times. The 15th Amendment, which outlawed the use of race. The 19th Amendment, which outlawed the use of gender. The 24th Amendment, which outlawed the use of taxes as a prerequisite for voting, most especially the poll tax. And the 26th Amendment, which said that you could not require a voting age greater than 18. We've also had a number of voting rights acts and court decisions which have expanded the suffrage. Now, the voter qualifications are relatively straightforward. Age, 18 or older. Residency, not more than 30 days, established by court decision, and not otherwise disqualified by having committed a felony or being declared mentally incompetent. Now, factors which influence who votes: age, education, race and ethnicity, income, the level of party competition in the state or area in which you live, and, believe it or not, whether or not you work for the government. Now, how you vote can be determined by education, income and socioeconomic status, religion, race, gender, and the region of the country in which you live. Now, previous restrictions on the right to vote were property taxation, property ownership and taxation, poll taxes, lengthy residence requirements, and in many states the use of literacy test. The efforts to overcome the restrictions on the right to vote: 24th Amendment, of course, eliminated the poll tax, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 as amended, and the HAVA, Help America Vote Act of 2002. Let's look at a little bit each of those. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 eliminated literacy test and other such devices in states where less than 50% of the voting age population was registered. And then in 1970, all literacy tests were eliminated. It required pre-clearance of governments seeking to change their election laws if they had had a history of voter discrimination. Now, the Supreme Court recently overturned that particular provision requiring pre-clearance. It's still illegal to do it, but there's a more involved process to have to deal with it. It makes it illegal to pass a measure which has voting discrimination as its purpose, and Texas is currently tied up in court over its photo ID bill because it's beginning to be pretty obvious that discriminating was one of its purposes. The Help America Vote Act of 2002 established the Election Assistance Commission to provide information for states, provided funds to improve election administration and replace outdated voting equipment, and created minimum standards for states to follow in certain areas of election administration. Now, some of the recent efforts to restrict voting are photo ID bills such as the state of Texas has adopted, reduced opportunities for voting, and the reduction of early voting opportunities in inadequate polling places, which results in very long lines so that people get discouraged and don't vote. Well, has any of this worked? Well, it depends on what you look at. If we look at VEP and VAP, you remember we talked about those, voting eligible population and voting age turnout rates. Both have had a seesaw pattern over the years. The 2012 election was pretty bad. We're not down to the level in 1996, nor down to the level of 1942-48, when millions of men were overseas. Factors which influence how you're going to vote: party identification, the factors of having to do with the candidates, policy issues. Now, we talk about retrospective versus prospective voting. Retrospective is when you're looking back at the incumbent and saying how good or how bad were they. 2016 is not going to be a retrospective election. except maybe as Clinton was evolved if she happens to become the Democratic Party nominee. Otherwise, we're looking forward to see what can they do. Personal policy considerations, sense of civic duty, and a sense of efficacy. Now, if people are going to vote on issues, they must care enough about the issues to become informed. There must be significant differences between the leading candidates for office. Those differences have to be communicated. Voters' preferred position should fall toward one candidate and away from the other, and party, personality, and other factors shouldn't distract the focus.